Hi, and welcome to Running on Carbs Podcast. This is episode number 35 of the podcast, and I would like to welcome you. I am your host, Coach Val, and I'm super excited to share this episode with you today, as I always am happy to share my episodes with you. I hope you're finding a lot of value in them. So excited that we have reached episode 35. From what I understand, a lot of episodes or podcasts don't make it past 10 episodes. So I am way ahead of that. And I hope you're really enjoying it. Of course, always reach out to me if there's ever a topic that you want me to cover or share or dive into. Please reach out. Let me know. I'm happy to take a look and dive into it. Boy, I love to respond to things like that. So today, though, we are going to talk about Thanksgiving recipes because this is the second episode in a series of episodes that I'm doing, very focused on plant-based eating, with regard to, mostly in regard to being an athlete, a plant-based runner. But the holidays are a special time, and holidays are the time of the year when family comes together and where food is highlighted in so many ways that it can be rather divisive or it can be something that brings us all together. And so, what I like to do is find ways to bring everyone together, no matter what their dietary requirements or choices are, and include everybody. And Thanksgiving is a prime holiday for that to occur. So we're going to talk about some of that today, and then on the second half of the episode, I'm going to break down an actual full traditional Thanksgiving menu and help you give you some tips on how to make each one of those traditional items plant-based, vegan, so that everyone can enjoy them, and it'll help save you some time in the kitchen if you are the one who cooks all the meals. So, this is the first of a couple other episodes that I'll do. I think I have one or two more planned um, for this series, and then we'll get back to some more running content. But I'm hoping you're enjoying this. So, this is going to be my eighth plant-based Thanksgiving. So I've learned a thing or two along the way. And this Thanksgiving is very different, actually, from my first Thanksgiving. But a lot of that has to do with, my age and our family dynamics and where we all are now in the world. And I think that's so common. I mean, this podcast, I talk to a lot of women who are in their 40s, 50s, and during this time of our life, a lot of our kids are grown. We have adult children or kids that are nearly out of the house or out of the house. Maybe they've been out of the house for a while, and they may have other families that they have since, joined into, and so they're splitting their time, and holidays just tend to look a little different as we get older. Sometimes we're really lucky, and it ends up that everyone comes to your house, and you have all the family around you. And other families, they get split up a little bit. Maybe you're across the globe or across the country, and those people, your family isn't quite as close anymore physically, not emotionally, but logistically, just not close by. And that really changes the dynamic. But I'm not really going to talk a lot about that today. But what I will talk about is the the family dynamics, in that when you have a plant-based individual, oftentimes you might be the only person in your family who eats that plant-based diet. Other times there's some other people who enjoy that, or who are just open to it and more flexible. But then you might have, other family members who are just adamant, traditional, don't change my menu, make all the traditional recipes that I grew up with. And that can throw a wrench in a new lifestyle change in diet that maybe you have incorporated. So let's talk a little bit about that. I when I first went plant-based, I went plant-based in August. So the very first, I think it was August 1st, actually, that I went plant-based. So it was only a couple months later that I was faced with the holidays and Thanksgiving being the first one. I am the cook primarily when it comes to holiday meals now. And so I was faced with, okay, what do I eat and how do I prepare that? And then how do I prepare everybody else's meals that, traditional recipes that they're expecting at this dinner? And I wasn't going to force everybody into my new way of eating. Instead, I just added my menu items to the full menu. As you can imagine, that was a lot of extra work. And it is doable, and I've learned some tips along the way, but that first year, whew, it was rough. I gotta admit, it was a rough prep and meal plan year. It's funny, every year it seems a little bit different. So it doesn't help that the first year being vegan, I decided I was going to make a mushroom Wellington. And mind you, I've never made any type of Wellington in my life. I've never cooked or purchased puff pastry before. And as a matter of fact, I've never purchased it since, if that gives you an indication of where this story is going. So I had no clue how to work with puff pastry. I won't even embarrass myself by telling you what I did with the stupid puff pastry, but it was not pretty, and I can tell you it didn't cook. It was too thick. I don't know what I was doing, and, I could barely eat it. It wouldn't cook and, finish cooking. It got burnt on the outside. It wasn't done on the inside. Um, I don't remember what the filling tasted like, but I do recall that the only way I could eat it was I had to tear off all the puff pastry and just eat the filling from the middle. I probably had to microwave it to heat it up because it just like I said, it wouldn't cook. So, it was a disaster, absolute disaster. Um, didn't set a good tone or, set a good example for the rest of my family about my new venture into plant-based eating, I can tell you that. But I stuck with it, and it's gotten a lot better. Um, Another year, I was also cooking I was getting a little better, but when you're cooking, you know, 5 different side dishes for a traditional menu, and then you want, some variety for your meal as well, so I was cooking maybe 3 or 4, side dishes and a main dish for myself, and actually, at the time, my sister and my nieces were also somewhat vegan, gluten-free vegan. And so they were also eating the menu that I created for myself. But we also had other individuals who were omnivore. And so I had to make a full menu for everybody. And they're just, I only have a 4 burner stove and one oven. So it was really hard to navigate all of those dishes with just one cooking appliance. So it took a lot of preparation, and I fully burnt the sweet potatoes with cranberries. I mean, like, couldn't eat it. That dish was just tossed in the trash. Um, and I think I burnt the rolls as well for everybody, the little crescent rolls, and it was a mess. So there's like a balance. I think that when you're creating a menu for 2 different individual or 2 different groups of people that are eating different menus, and you're gonna do this all in one small, traditional kitchen, um, you're going to have to really plan that out, and figure out your cooking times, and you're gonna have to be really, really organized, and that year, I was not. Since then, I have become much more, organized, but this year is very different. So I really went from a pretty large family. with a lot of people in our home during the holidays to this year just being my husband and I. So we're really the empty nesters this year, like for real. Now, we thought we were gonna be empty nesters for real last year, and we were totally prepared to be empty nesters for the Thanksgiving holiday, and instead, like, last minute, my son called and said, "Hey, we're coming to town, for Thanksgiving, surprise." And, um, and I didn't have anything, and then I think my niece came over also, and so we had more people than I had anticipated, um, and so we, like, quickly scrambled to try to pull some food together, for everybody that was going to be coming, and it was still pretty non-traditional. I think I ended up doing a quiche for them, and, which normally I save for, Christmas holidays, but this year I did a or last year I did a quiche. Um, anyway, it was just kind of all spur of the moment. But you know what? We had family together, and that was the idea was that, hey, it doesn't matter what we're eating, we're all together. So we went the non-traditional route last year also. I think we had ham or something for those that ate it. No turkey, nothing, no birds. Um, but this year, uh, we are going a different direction, and we truly, truly will be empty nesters. And I am going to make just something for my husband, a small dish, and who is not he's not plant-based, but I am, and that's a whole other story I can share someday as far as how we work that out. But this year I'm gonna do a soup that I don't get to do very often or get to make very often. It's a pumpkin lasagna soup, and you just make it in the Instant Pot, and then you make a tofu ricotta, that goes over that. And it's really delicious. It's a little salty, but it's really delicious, and because it is kinda salty, it's not something that I eat throughout the year very often, but it's very, nice and warm and cozy with the pumpkin and the tomato and everything, so that's my menu, for this year. Very simple, and then maybe, a salad on the side. So we're keeping it simple. So for any of my family members that may want to show up last minute, who listen to my podcast, which I know there are, then just be forewarned, if you show up, you're having pumpkin lasagna soup this year. Um, so okay, so back to what I was talking about. So planning, for this year. Um, I am also gonna do a new dessert because what holiday is a holiday without a dessert? And I am a huge dessert person. I love my desserts, and so being vegan, and plant-based has not changed that whatsoever. I'm just a little more choosy about what it is that I eat. So this year, I am gonna try a new recipe, for a vegan cheesecake. I haven't had cheesecake in forever. There's a restaurant nearby my house that has a cheesecake that is really delicious. I love to have it. Um, but I wanna make one. I want one I haven't had a homemade cheesecake for many, many years, and I used to love making them. So that's what I'm gonna do. If you are trying out new recipes, one tip I can give you right off the bat is if you ever have the opportunity to make that recipe ahead of time to test it out before you go and feed it to a dozen people, it's a really good idea. But in my case, for the cheesecake, I've never made it before, but it is just gonna be me, so if it doesn't come out very well, it's okay. And I also don't need 2 cheesecakes. I mean, I really, really don't need 2 cheesecakes. So, I'm just gonna try it out and hope for the best. But that is tip number 1 there. If you are gonna make, new recipes, try them out ahead of time, like, during the year or maybe several weeks ahead of time if you can, and do a test run so that you know consistency, cooking time, do you need to change up some of the ingredients, things like that? It's always good to do that on anything that you're gonna cook for a large number of people, so you really have an idea of how that recipe is gonna turn out, so you don't end up with the mushroom Wellington disaster like mine. So, um, also, when you're planning your actual meal plan for the holiday, um, use ingredients that you're used to as much as you possibly can, especially if you're making a recipe for the first time, and you don't have time to make it ahead of time, or it's like me, the cheesecake, you don't want to make it ahead of time like that. Um, then use ingredients at least that you're familiar with cooking with, because that will at least give you some familiarity with it. You'll have an idea of how long certain things take to cook and what they come out as far as consistency is concerned. And it'll just give you a little leg up to help you have better success with your recipe. Also, limit the number of side dishes. Like I was talking about before, when I first went plant based and I'm trying to cook, 11 or 12 dishes. I don't even remember the insane number of dishes I was trying to make that year. Um, but if you are making, both non-plant-based and plant-based dishes, all at the same time, just try to limit the number so that they're more manageable and you don't burn your cranberry sweet potatoes like I did. Um, it is helpful if your family is open to new recipes. Um, you are like golden. You're very fortunate. I do not have that luck. um, but if your family is more open to different recipes, then you might be able to limit the more traditional recipes that you used to cook. And then now you can start maybe incorporating the plant based recipes and side dishes and things, or main dish, into your Thanksgiving menu, and eliminate some of the other ones. Like if you've got something that you just make it because your grandmother always used to make it and it never really gets eaten, or people just feel obligated to eat it but they don't really like it. There are so many dishes like that on American families' tables. I bet we all have a story of one of those dishes that you make every year, and no one really likes it. They take like the smallest portion and put it on their plate, and then you've got a whole bunch left over that you end up pretty much having to throw away probably. That is the dish to replace. So replace that one first, and then, work your way out and replace the other ones as you go. But if you can replace some of those with plant-based dishes, that'll be a real win for you because you'll have a smaller menu, and you'll be incorporating these plant-based menu items and dishes that maybe you can introduce to your family that they might like very much, um, and not feel like, oh, they have to give something up, or um, they won't be so fixated. Some people are very fixated on there's no meat in there, or there's no milk in there or something, and they get very fixated on what's not in there, or that it's been replaced with something. Um, but if you have a more flexible family, you might be able to introduce that very easily. Um, my family, very, very fixed, very fixed on a lot of these things. So I don't have that benefit. I've tried a couple dishes here and there, um, and no, they haven't quite gone over the way I would have liked. So a little different in my family, but everyone is different. So for me, my menu, I'll give you an idea of what a fully plant-based Thanksgiving menu looks like. I have these recipes that I printed out a number of years ago now, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, that I printed out and I put in little sheet protectors, and then I have them hooked onto one of those little rings, like a I don't know what they're called. It's just a little ring to hold all the sheet protectors together. And then that way, when I go to make a holiday shopping list, Thanksgiving meal shopping list, I just pull that out of the cupboard. All my recipes are together. And then I can use that as I'm cooking too. I just kind of flip them around as I'm making the different recipes. and they're always all together, and because the sheet protector is there, it keeps them clean. If I get something on them, I just wipe it off. So, that's my max organization right there. I feel very proud of that. It's worked very well. So my main dish, that I make traditionally, not this year, but traditionally, is a roasted butternut squash, that I stuff with wild rice stuffing. So it's not really stuffing, it's wild rice mix, that I put into the butternut squash, and then I roast it in the oven, and I love it, and that actually, has gone over very well, even with my, non-plant-based, family members. So even they will take small pieces of it because, I mean, it's just rice and butternut squash, so who doesn't love that? That's my main dish. And it's very pretty. You tie it up with the twine, and so it looks like a little butternut squash roast, literally. Um, One of the side dishes that, goes over very well with a lot of my family members, and I really love them, is the maple Brussels sprouts and cranberries. Those are really, really good, and you just roast them in the oven. And then the next one are those sweet potatoes that I burned, the cinnamon roasted sweet potatoes with cranberries. And it's funny because I am not a big cranberry person. Um, Only time of the year I ever eat cranberries are Thanksgiving, and they're dried cranberries in most of these recipes, although you can use fresh. Um, and it's the only time of the year I ever eat them. But I like the cranberries, but just not cranberry sauce. So if you want a cranberry sauce, there's lots of options for that. And I can tell you that one appetizer that I make that goes over like a smashing successful hit with both my plant based and non plant based family members is the stuffed mushrooms. So even my husband, who hates all things vegan, will eat the stuffed mushrooms. And so the mushrooms are made with a vegan cream cheese, sun-dried tomatoes, fresh basil, and garlic. And you whip that all together in a food processor, stuff the mushroom with it, bake them. Everybody loves them. And it when I make it, I usually have a larger crowd, and so I make a double batch. And then whatever's left over that we didn't stuff mushrooms with becomes a dip for crackers and things like that. It is absolutely delicious. Everybody loves it. So if you like sun-dried tomatoes, that is the recipe for you. So, by the way, everything I just mentioned, I put links in the show notes. So, if you are interested in any of that, or you want to check out any of these recipes, I just put links to the blogs that have these recipes in the show notes, so you can go and check them out and make them for your family. Let me know how they go. If you make any of those recipes, let me know how they go over with your family, good or bad. Just let me know. I'm curious. Okay, so here's a couple of tips to survive Thanksgiving cooking. And this is plant based or not plant based, but I think it goes extra, if that's a term, um, for those that are cooking a larger menu or a diverse menu. We'll call it a diverse menu. So if you are making a diverse menu, you need to be organized and you need to plan ahead and try to do as much prep as you possibly can before Thanksgiving, before your actual official like showtime day. So, for example, prep whatever you can, chopping vegetables, making the stuffed mushroom mixture, making the stuffing or the wild rice. Like if you do the butternut squash, try partially. What I do with the butternut squash is I will partially cook the butternut squash if it's really big, because sometimes some years they have really massive butternut squash available, and that's like all they have. So I had this happen one year, and it was huge. It was going to take hours to cook, and when you've got a bunch of other recipes that have to go, dishes that have to go in that one oven of mine, I can't have this massive roasting plate taking up room in there for hours and hours. So what I did was I pre-baked the butternut squash partially the night before, and then I made all the stuffing, the wild rice stuffing for it. And then in the morning or when I was ready, when the time was right, then I stuffed it, put it all together. Actually, I take it back. I forgot. I did that one year, but then I learned I could put it all together the night before. So I actually built, built the whole thing and had it ready to go. And I just wrapped it in foil, stuck it in the refrigerator overnight. And then when I was ready to cook it, I put the whole thing in the oven, and it was already, tied up, stuffed, ready to go. Put the whole thing in the oven, and it took a lot less time to finish cooking. And really, what needed to finish cooking is just the squash. The butternut squash is such a dense squash. It can take a really long time to cook, especially if it's so big. So that was one tip is do as much as you can the night before. You're doing the Brussels sprouts, clean, chop, and put the Brussels sprouts together, stick them in a bag till the morning or the next day when you're ready to actually throw them all together in the pan and cook them. You can do the stuff. So the stuffed mushroom stuffing is easy to do. Cube the sweet potatoes. So if you're going to do the sweet potatoes, you can cube all those, whatever it is that you need to prep for your menu. If there's anything that you can prep the day before, all the way down to like cooking it and then having it ready to just reheat, some things can go okay that way. Some things not. So just, make a good choice on that one. When it comes to veganizing some recipes, some things to think about to swap would be like butter to a vegan margarine. Some of them are obvious. Milk to a plant-based milk, eggs to an egg alternative. Really depends on your recipe. Sometimes you can absolutely just omit the egg. Other times you have to replace it with something. So you'll have to look at the recipe that you are preparing to determine, what choice you can make on that. Yogurt is an easy one to swap out now because there are so many plant-based yogurts available on the market now. You can easily swap that out with the plant-based. Of course, the vegan cream cheese, there's vegan sour cream. There's all sorts of things that are vegan now that you can, just buy off the shelf. You don't even have to make them from home from scratch, although that's always an alternative as well. But if you have a lot to do, sometimes around the holidays, it's not the time to cook everything from scratch. Sometimes we need a little help with a canned product or a refrigerated or frozen product. So, no harm in that if it makes sense for you and it puts your menu, together faster and all the food on the table on time. It is harder to swap out your main meal, though. So I thought maybe I'd give you a couple options. Well, I'll do that in a little bit. I think first you have to know your audience. So when it comes to your main dish, so traditionally it's turkey in the United States. Sometimes people use ham, um, and sometimes people use, more beef products. So it just kind of depends. But I think really traditionally, turkey is the main dish at a Thanksgiving meal. So replacing that can sometimes be a little tricky if you have people who are just diehard turkey fans. Before I went plant-based, I was never a turkey fan to begin with. So for me, it was really easy just to drop the turkey altogether anyway. Other people, they like it, so it's a little harder for them to let go of. But know your audience. I think that's the key here. Can you talk to your family about eliminating the turkey from Thanksgiving? Is it something they'd even be open to? You have to know your audience when it comes to that. So I will leave that in your capable hands. But there's there are options. So we'll talk about a few of those in a few minutes. So let's talk about the menu though. Let's get there now. So the traditional Thanksgiving recipes, I'm going to talk about some traditional menu items that are on the table on Thanksgiving, and then some tips on how to veganize them without eliminating them altogether. And a lot of these you may be able to do, and your family wouldn't know the difference one way or the other, and it's going to fully simplify your cooking experience. So you won't have to make a whole bunch of new recipes and new menu items if you can simply swap out a couple of ingredients in some of these side dishes. Because a lot of the traditional Thanksgiving side dishes are vegetable based. And so if they're vegetable based, then really it's what you're cooking them in or with that's going to make them no longer fully plant-based. So if you can swap out those few ingredients, that's going to simplify your life quite a bit. So first off, mashed potatoes. Super common at Thanksgiving, and a very easy one to make plant-based because there are so many available products now on the market. So you can switch out whole milk for plant-based milk. I do recommend that you don't use a thin milk. So you would want to use a thicker plant-based milk. I recommend cashew. That's a very thick plant-based milk. So cashew milk maybe, potentially plain soy. Make sure you don't have vanilla soy. Don't make mashed potatoes with vanilla soy. I accidentally did that one time. Oh, awful. Absolutely awful. So yeah, don't do that. Learn from my mistakes. I've made lots of them, as you can see. So I'm all about the trial and error. Test it out, fail. Okay, we'll do better next time. That's okay. We all learn. So mashed potatoes are easy one. Vegan butter, is very available. There's lots of different products on the market that you can choose from. Pick your favorite. There's vegan sour cream and vegan cream cheese if you like to put those in your mashed potatoes traditionally. So you can just swap those out for the vegan alternative and still have that flavor in your mashed potatoes. The next one would be the baked sweet potatoes. One alternative, so sugar is not, um, depending on who you talk to. So sugar is plant-based, but many traditional vegans who are what I consider ethical vegans will not eat white sugar. Because oftentimes white sugar is used or created using bone char. And so the traditional ethical vegans do not consider sugar to be uh, vegan because of that. So it's one of those kind of, I don't know, those middle of the road foods that some people eat it and some people don't who are vegan. But again, as I've mentioned before on my podcast, I use the terms interchangeable, plant-based and vegan, but I primarily focus on plant-based. So not so much the vegan for animals and ethical reasons, but really more for health reasons. So if that is your eating realm or eating position as well, then you can do sugar no problem. But if you want an alternative, then you can use an alternative sugar like a monk fruit or something like that. For brown sugar, you could easily one for one swap with coconut sugar. I do that quite often just because I prefer coconut sugar for the whole food benefits of the sugar itself. It's a lower glycemic food as well. So if those things are important to you, then coconut sugar is a good alternative. Um, and then when it comes to the sweet potatoes, there's lots of different ways that you can create or make these. So the very traditional American sweet potato casserole uses marshmallows. And I'm gonna laugh. I know like for many of my listeners are not in America. And so if you're listening to this, you might be wondering, why in the world would you put marshmallows on a sweet potato? That sounds awful. So I have to kind of laugh at that a little bit myself. But yeah, that's That's a very traditional menu item for a traditional Thanksgiving meal. Um, Marshmallows on sweet potatoes with like I don't know, maple syrup, something or other. I've never actually made it, but I've had it many, many times. Um, but there are marshmallows. If this is your menu item and you have this every single year, and if you didn't make it, your family would revolt, then you can buy vegan marshmallows. Traditional, like regular marshmallows, are made with gelatin, and gelatin is made with animal products. So you wouldn't want to use a product that has gelatin in it. And I think this one truly is not like a sugar made with bone car kind of thing. Um, Gelatin has a lot of other qualities that just don't have health benefits either, as well as being a animal product, like a pure animal product. So it comes from like the hooves and the things like that from the animal. So Dandies is a brand that is available at least in the United States. I don't know about Canada, but it's available in the US. And they make marshmallows, both the little ones and the big ones. So you can use those in your sweet potato casserole. And then, of course, just a vegan butter, because usually there's a butter that goes in there to brown everything. So that one has some easy swaps available. Cranberry sauce. That's another traditional item on the Thanksgiving table, and this is one that you think, well, it's made with cranberries. What do I have to worry about? Of course, it's vegan. Not automatically. So, if you use orange juice, you have to know that you're using an orange juice that is pure, just oranges. Orange juice is one of those grocery store items that a lot of people will just grab off the shelf. They've never looked at the label, so they don't really know what other ingredients are added to their juice. And so sometimes they contain additives like that are sourced from animal products like gelatin that we just talked about. Sometimes they use fish oil in order to add omegas to the juice. And then also, in order to add D3, they will oftentimes use lanolin, and lanolin is derived from sheep's wool. So it is very possible that your orange juice is not vegan, and it isn't even fully plant based because it has all these animal products in it potentially. So if you're going to make your cranberry sauce with orange juice, then make sure that you are checking the label and that the only thing in your juice is oranges and maybe water. So that's it. Um, okay, so next item is the traditional green bean casserole. And this is one that is my family favorite. This is one of those that you cannot make a traditional family meal without. So it is always on the table at Thanksgiving when we have our big Thanksgiving. I gotta just keep remembering, just like, okay, this one is not traditional. This one doesn't count, so to speak. This is a totally different realm for me in my life. So, but the traditional green bean casserole uses a canned cream of mushroom soup mix, and that is, of course, nowhere near vegan. So that one has milk in it, and yeah, you don't use that one. Um, but there are some alternatives that are available, like on Amazon. I have one of them in my cupboard, and I've used it before. Not really my favorite, I admit, but there's a couple of new products that are now available on Amazon. If you search for vegan cream of mushroom soup, then you'll find some mixes that come up. Um, and you just mix it up so that it's thick using a plant-based milk, and it makes your soup base, so that you can add your other ingredients. And then, of course, if you are using, well, I don't think you use butter in this one, but of course, the milk that you would use would just be a plant-based milk. And again, I would recommend a thicker plant-based milk, like a cashew on this one, just because you're looking for that thickness and that creaminess. So a thicker milk is a good alternative for this one. All right, dinner rolls. I'm gonna make this one really easy. Number 1, bread is typically vegan. So unless you get like the butter rolls, you're probably okay with just your regular old bakery roll. But if you like them, the Pillsbury crescent rolls are one of those what they call accidentally vegan items that you can just grab off the grocery store shelf and bake them up. And I don't know about you, but that's not something that I would eat normally throughout the year. But it is kind of nice on a holiday to have something super simple and these little crescent rolls. So those are accidentally vegan. So they're super simple if you want to pick up a roll of those for your family. All right, next one is the stuffing or the dressing. So if you're not actually stuffing anything, it's not really considered stuffing. It's more considered a dressing, but who's counting, right? Who's That's just semantics. So with stuffing, dressing, it is easy to make vegan again. You just don't use a chicken broth. You would use a vegetable broth. You would use vegan butter instead of a dairy butter. But something to note that if you will use a boxed stuffing, make sure you're reading the label carefully because some brands will use animal products in the stuffing mix. So, for example, Stovetop Stuffing brand, they use chicken in I think in all of the ones that I checked, all had chicken in the ingredients in the stuffing. Even the savory herb one had chicken. So if you typically buy a box stuffing, then make sure you're reading the label. I know Petridge Farm has a vegan one. It doesn't say vegan, but it is. It doesn't have any animal products in it. But again, they're always changing up ingredients on packaged products. So always read the labels and just double check and make sure. But there are several different boxed products of stuffing mixes that don't have animal products in them that you can choose from. So just check those out. Just look for those vegan friendly ones. Okay, so gravy. Gravy is one of those that also can be very easy to make a vegan option. Use vegan butter instead of your dairy butter. Don't obviously use any meat drippings in your gravy. Instead, to give it flavor and depth, make sure that you're using a good broth, like a good vegetable broth. And mushrooms make a really good addition to a gravy and gives it that like depth and umami flavor. So mushroom gravy is such a great option for a gravy. And then, of course, it's how you spice it. How do you season your gravy? Sage, rosemary, garlic, all of those are going to be fantastic ways to season your gravy and make it really good. That is another one of those items on my Thanksgiving table that I will only make the vegan option, and everybody loves it. So you can make the vegan um, mushroom gravy, and hopefully in your family it's a big hit too. But if I'm telling you, if my family eats it, I would say like 90% of the families out there who are sort of like, don't give me something without meat in it, they will still eat that. So you're probably okay with the mushroom gravy. Okay, let's go to dessert. Let's go to dessert. I love dessert. Okay, pumpkin pie. Pumpkin pie is one of those that's like, "Oh, I love it. Oh, I hate it." So it's I don't know which side you're on. Um, I I like it. I certainly don't hate it. But I like pumpkin pie. I'll eat that. So with pumpkin pie, you're gonna omit the eggs. And you're going to replace if it calls for condensed milk, you're going to replace that with coconut milk instead of condensed milk. Um, there are so many recipe options available online. I've never actually made a pumpkin pie at home. I have gotten it out and about, a vegan option. Um, but you can easily make it at home. The recipes are usually pretty darn simple. The other dessert that's very common is an apple pie. And Again, it's a really easy one to make vegan. You replace the egg wash with a vegan butter. So when you are baking it, you want to put it in the oven and have the top crust, and maybe you do the lattice or something. You want it to brown up a bit. So you just use a vegan butter on that instead of an egg wash. So that will help it brown. And then also a little bit of sugar will help it brown as well. All right, here we go. Main dish. Main dish. I saved it for last because there actually are quite a lot of options. This is where you can really get creative, is your main dish for Thanksgiving. I've already mentioned the stuffed butternut squash because that's my favorite and I think it presents really well. Um, and especially if you have a larger family, what I've done before is I bought two squashes, so two smaller ones, and I just made two squashes instead. So you had one for like each end of the table. So it's really flexible as well. So that one is one. Of course, the mushroom Wellington. Good luck to you. I hope you. Hats off to you if you're a lot better cook than I am. I honestly, though, I've never tried it again. I wonder if I would be a lot better now at that. I think I just ruined it for myself the first year. I should not have jumped into a mushroom Wellington my first year vegan when I'm not a normally, a great cook to begin with. Um, I'm like the simple cook. I'm not the like fancy gourmet cook. So if you are, then go for the mushroom Wellington. I know a lot of people really do love it, and it tends to be like a hit with both plant-based and non-plant-based family members. I know I've seen a lot of people make that every year. Some vegan restaurants, if you have a restaurant nearby you, they might even have that on a pre-order option. There was a restaurant here in my area that has since closed down, but they used to offer a Thanksgiving menu, and they had a mushroom Wellington option, but it was really expensive, and it's just me, so I never bought it, but it's a very popular Thanksgiving main dish for plant-based families. Another option is a lentil loaf. I know it sounds kind of blah, I could make a lentil loaf any day of the week, but you could dress it up and you can make it a little fancier. So a lentil loaf is definitely an option. I know a lot of people actually do that because there's a lot of prep work that goes into making a lentil loaf that it might not be something you want to do every week. But for a Thanksgiving holiday and a family holiday might be a good option. Uh, you could always buy the store-bought Tofurkey loaf. There's a lot of people who like it. I bought one time, just once, and I was not a fan. So I won't go that route again, but I had to try it. I felt obligated to try it, and I was looking for something simple. I didn't use it for Thanksgiving. I think I used it for a Christmas meal. Um, and, yeah, I just wasn't a fan. So, but it's definitely an option because I know a lot of people really do like them. I think it's made with seitan. So that is an option, especially if you, like me, if it's just a small, family or just yourself, then maybe you don't want to go through the whole hassle of cooking a bunch of food and making a whole stuffed squash. Maybe you just want to grab something off the grocery store shelf. Um, do it. You know what? Take care of yourself. If that is what you have capacity for, do it. It is one day. So go for it. And another option, sort of a last option on my list, but I'm sure there's more. These are just to kind of get your mind, kind of going in this direction. But it's a pot pie or maybe like a shepherd's pie. So you could make little mini pot pies and you can put lots of different things in them. I have made a pot pie, not for Thanksgiving, but I've made a pot pie in the past with, what are they called? Soy curls. And I've also made it with lentils. So you can mix up the ingredients quite a lot for your innards for the pot pie. Or again, like I said, the shepherd's pie that has the potatoes on top and everything already. And there you go, one pot and you're done. So those are some options just to kind of get the wheels turning about what some good options might be for a Thanksgiving meal and your main dish. So hopefully that has been helpful, helped give you some ideas, and maybe even helped you know that just because you went plant-based doesn't mean that your Thanksgiving holiday traditions have to go by the wayside entirely. You can do it, and you can incorporate both plant-based and non-plant-based menu items to the Thanksgiving table, and maybe even inspire some family members to take on more plant-based way of eating, especially if you are setting the example as an active runner and individual, and how healthy you are eating this way and being active. You never know who's watching. You never know who's keeping an eye on that and being inspired by it. And so you want to be inspiring to help your family make better food choices. And if this can help, then that's fantastic. And that's all we could really want, is to have a healthier family, who's there with us longer and living out the healthy years, right? Not just living longer, but living healthier in those years. And that's our goal. So hopefully this has been helpful and inspiring to you, and to know that it doesn't have to take a lot to veganize some of your favorite family recipes. So please let me know, how does it go? How did your Thanksgiving go once you've made your recipes? Maybe if you want to reach out before Thanksgiving and tell me, what are you going to make? And then don't forget to check out the show notes for those recipe links for any of these menu items that you might be interested in. And if you need help, if this sounds like fully overwhelming and you're like, you know what, Coach Val, I could really use some guidance, a little bit of assistance as far as making sure that, I can manage transitioning from a omnivore diet to a plant-based diet, and how do I navigate holidays, going out, making sure that my nutrition is on point for my runs, more than just one time during the year and the holidays, but all throughout the year. That's what I do. I want to help you be that accountability partner, number one, and help you know how to make these swaps in the healthiest way that you can, and in a manageable way, a way that you can incorporate into your life without overwhelming your life. So, those are the things that I help through my one on one coaching. So, if that is of interest to you, then reach out and we'll have a conversation. There's always a link in the show notes to reach out and set yourself up on my calendar. So, please use that link, or send me a DM over on Instagram. All right, everybody, have a fantastic holiday. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, then happy Thanksgiving to you. And I hope to see you here for our next episode of the Running on Carbs podcast. And in the meantime, go and run your best life on carbs. I'm Coach Val. I will see you next time. Take care.